by Huntley Exploration. This is the conditional use hearing. This use has been approved and recommended by the Township Planning Commission. At this time, the applicant will, I guess I'll go over sort of the outline of the process. We'll have the applicant give their presentation. At that time, we can ask any questions from the Board of Commissioners. Any parties to the case can then present their case. We will then have public comment, and then we will adjourn the hearing. At this time, I would ask anybody who is immediately affected by this use, if you would like party status, to please come forward. Again, party status will only mean that you are affected by this in a particular way, more than just a general, from a general resident perspective. So if you're an adjoining property owner, if you live within a certain distance, you probably have the right to party status. So is there anyone here today who would like party status in this case? Okay, please come forward. Ask you to fill out one of these forms. Zeller, I'm going to ask you to stand up here. Mr. Lucas, do you have any questions for Mr. Zeller? Mr. Zeller, what is your address?
My address, my residence is 235 Greasy Road, Odessa.
And how close are you to the proposed use?
Borders are on the outside, so also right there.
Okay. Mr. Lucas? No objection? Okay. You'll be granted party status. Mr. Rossetti? Your address, sir?
1331 Nichols Hill Road.
And how close are you to the proposed use?
About a quarter of a mile away, slide out. I'm on Nichols Hill.
So they're on Nichols Hill Road?
It affects me because of the truck traffic.
Okay. Mr. Lucas?
No question.
Any objection? Okay. You'll be granted party status, sir. Ms. Ash? Your address, please?
1200 Fallen Timber Road,
And how close are you to the proposed use?
about a quarter of a mile, and then 1,500 feet from Apollo Beach.
And you're concerned for truck traffic or any traffic? Mr. Lucas?
No question.
Any objection? Okay. You'll be granted party status. At this time, we'll have Mr. Lucas go ahead and give his presentation. I should say at the outset, this is all one presentation, is that right, Mr. Lucas?
Yes, that is, we'll see, it makes sense to combine both CEDO and catering into one presentation, so sort of interrelated projects.
Yeah, unless there's any objection, I agree. I think that's the most, economical way to handle this at this point. So, go ahead.
Okay, so for the record, my name is Wayne Lucas, law firm of Bass County, Pittsburgh, and we represent the applicant on both conditional uses, Huntley and Exploration LLC. In terms of a broad overview, there are two components of this, but HHEX is developing a water distribution facility for use in Elizabeth Township and surrounding areas, the purpose of which is to dramatically reduce the need to truck water to its well paths for hydraulic fracturing purposes. In a broad brush sense, the system will draw water from the yacht through an intake in the river, pump it up through a pump house called Gaylene. It's going to be constructed on property owned by the township. The township and HHEX have entered into an easement agreement. That easement agreement is included in all the application materials. From there, the water is going to be pumped uphill to the CEDO tank pad to the previously approved by this board. The net result of this system, once it's operational, will take roughly 4,000 truck trips off the road. Actually, one trip in, one trip out, so 8,000 to 10,000 trips for each well was going to be drilled on any of those well pads. There are a number of components and approvals related to all this. 2 of these are here before you tonight. The first is the Galeen, that's the site down by the river, for the water withdrawal facility along the yacht, and then the CETO conditional use for the tanks adjacent to the recently approved Lucas pad. The CETO pad has also been recently approved, although actually Huntley is proposing to actually shrink the size of that pad, so I'm going to explain that in a little more detail. Both uses are now authorized as conditional uses under your revised zoning ordinance, and as your solicitor noted, the planning commission has recommended approval. Here with me tonight, Kim Price, who many of you recognize from Huntley's governmental affairs group, will provide a system overview, explain how the project as a whole is going to work. Ryan Daly from CEC, who you're familiar with from prior applications, will then run down through the details of both sites. We have a number of other people here that in the event questions arise that are beyond Kim's or Brian's knowledge or expertise, that we can pull them up. Tage Rosendahl with acoustical control, Brian Julmuth, who's a regulatory advisor with HHEX, Scott Kruger, who's a water and superintendent with HHEX, Jonathan Shimko with McKim and Creed, which is the company that's designing the actual pump house at Galeen, and Jennifer King from Stall Schaefer Engineering, or Jennifer King, excuse me, who handles the traffic consulting for Huntley. In the interest of moving things along real quickly, we have 5 exhibits that we've submitted. Exhibits 1 and 2 are the Galeen application and the CETO application, respectively. Those were submitted in mass quantities to the township already, so we're not copying those all again, but we did provide a full set to your solicitor, to the court reporter, and to Mr. Nelson. We also have an extra set that anyone wants to look at. So exhibit 1 is the Galeen application and all its subparts. Exhibit 2 is the CETO application and all its subparts. Exhibit 3 is a drawing called OV1, which actually is enlarged on the board here, that shows the system as a whole, and Ms. Price will talk about that. Exhibit 4 is a rendering of what the pump house building in particular will look like, and we'll project that up on the screen in addition. And then Exhibit 5 is the updated, slightly reduced size of the CETO pad. So with those preliminaries out of the way, I'd like to first turn it over to Ms. Kim Price to give a brief overview of the system as a whole and explain its benefits. And then Ryan Daly will get into the details of both sites. Yep.
Good evening, thanks for having us. As Lee mentioned, I wanted to briefly go over the system as a whole to help you better understand how the water system is going to be utilized to benefit the township and the efficiency of operations here in Elizabeth. So currently we have 15 wells permitted within Elizabeth Township. That is 15 that the Board of Commissioners has approved for us to develop. Our 2019 development plan is actually to develop only 6 of those right now. So we're actively drilling 3 at the Apollo B well pad, and we will soon be going to the Plutus well pad to drill an additional 3. We do intend to drill all 15 of those at some point. However, 2019 is that's the current outlook. As we've mentioned in previous hearings and meetings, we anticipate that it takes about 5,000 or so trucks to frack trucks full of water to complete a individual Marcellus shale well. It has always been our intention to find ways to reduce truck traffic off of the roads in Elizabeth and in our other communities, and that is how we've kind of come up with the system that we're presenting to you this evening. So currently, our only source of piped water to these well pads is coming from the PAWC, the Pennsylvania American Water Company. And this water source, unfortunately, is not able to provide quite high enough rates and volumes to conduct what we would consider efficient completions operations without supplemented water from another source. And when I say supplemented water, that would be trucked water at the rate of several hundred trucks per day. So we estimate that if we only use the PAWC source, it could take us up to 30 days to complete a single well, which is significantly longer than we would like, significantly longer than anyone in the industry would consider efficient operations. So because of these limitations, we started to look quite a while ago into other options for piping water to these locations. And it seems that the most feasible and realistic option for here in Elizabeth Township is to have a freshwater withdrawal and an associated a tank pad or tank that we could store that water at. This plan would enable us to complete wells in as little as 7 to 14 days instead of what I quoted just a second ago, the 30 days, by only using the PAWC source. As I mentioned, the revised plans for 2019 include 3 wells at Apollo B and 3 wells at Plutus. Our calculations indicate that it would last over 6 months if we only utilized the PAWC source without supplemental trucking, but this amount of time is reduced to only about 2 months if we were to utilize this source, and if we were able to build the Gilleen freshwater intake facility. So now I'd like to draw your attention to the map that is up here, but also right here. So for ease, I'll go ahead and use this one. The Plutus well pad that you guys are all very familiar with is located here, and Apollo B is over here for your reference. The Gilleen freshwater intake facility will be located on, as Blaine mentioned, Township property down along the Youghiogheny River. As Blaine mentioned again, that we have entered into an easement agreement with the Township for the use of this property, and that was executed March 4th. The facility itself will take up an above-ground footprint of only about 640 square feet, and the house will house, the facility will house 2 electric pumps, and buried water pipelines will actually take that water that is pumped from the river and deliver it to a freshwater tank at the Cedo tank pad, which was approved recently. It will take it up there to the Cedo tank pad where the Cedo tank would be located, and that's the Cedo tank is what we're here about tonight as well. These projects will virtually eliminate HHEX's water truck traffic in Elizabeth Township, and we multiply the idea of the 5,000 truckloads I mentioned, we multiply that by 2 to get the full effect of impact on residents who would be near that truck traffic. So 10,000 truck trips per well. For this summer, we estimate that would be around 60,000 truck trips. And to help you better understand where those locations would be, we would reference this green line that's up on the map. You can see this is actually Nichols Hill Road. This is Fallen Timber Road. And these are the approved haul routes that would be utilized to access, to deliver water to these respective sites. So the residents along these routes are the ones that would be impacted by that traffic. Over the life of development for the approved wells that we have so far, the 15 wells, we're then talking about a total of about 150,000 truck trips. I'd like to reinforce that we've been working very hard to secure these plans, which will be evidenced by the presentation this evening with Ryan Daly. But we are interested in reducing the community impact, and the plans that we've developed are evidence of that. But as our projects progress in the area and we continue down our path of development, we are noticing that the time is certainly of the essence in order to ensure that we can keep these trucks off the road because of the schedules that we have ahead of us. So as you know, we did recently begin drilling operations at the Apollo B well pad. And we will be having that location ready for water here in just a couple of short months. Our goal is to have the Cedo tank and Galeen freshwater intake facility installed prior to these operations taking place to ensure that water truck traffic is kept at a minimum. If these facilities are not operational, our team will have to haul necessary water to those sites. It's necessary that we secure all of our township approvals so that we can get started on these projects. And of course, the township's support of these projects and expedient approval of such applications that will be presented this evening is very much appreciated by our team and of course the many township residents who would like to see reduced truck traffic in the area. So thank you. I'm sure we'll be passing it on to Ryan, but if anyone has any questions for me, I'd be happy to address them.
Any questions from the commissioners?
I do have a question.
Sure.
I don't know the documents, but,
I have.
yep, one of my questions is any water leaving Elizabeth Township? So I know that you're pumping water out of the river, taking to your two well pads that are already in Elizabeth Township. But do you have well pads proposed in other municipalities that you're gonna use our water for?
We don't currently have any proposed in other municipalities except for Elizabeth Township in this area of our footprint.
But does that mean it's not gonna happen?
In the future, we may wish to utilize this water in other locations, but we don't have plans in place to develop in other locations.
That was a good question.
Yeah.
Because if you do, now we're gonna have truck traffic again, because you're gonna have to get it from here to the new location.
Well, no, we actually wouldn't. So.
How would you get it, let's say it's in Westmoreland County somewhere?
So what we would do is we would have to expand our pipeline. We would have to expand our pipeline from where it currently is in order to build that system out. But we wouldn't have the water truck traffic, the volumes that I'm talking about here this evening. Do you know what I mean? So,
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
I'm totally in favor of no truck traffic.
for sure.
Other questions? This is near a proposed recreation area. Will it interfere with the recreation area?
We don't feel that it will. I think what Ryan will be able to show you this evening, what the facility looks like. We don't anticipate it will be noisy. It is a standalone building that houses 2 pumps. So we're going to be taking extra precautions during construction to ensure that it doesn't interfere with any activities that may be going on in that area. But we don't feel that it will be of any significant impact to the community.
Would you be willing to cover it with whatever needs to be done, trees or what have you?
Actually, we're going to be talking about that this evening. We do have a rendering that illustrates that we're open to, including some vegetation around the building to make sure that it kind of fits in with the surroundings and things like that.
Because cutting back on the truck traffic is going to be a nice savings for you. I'd like to see the township share more in that savings.
Building the facility is a big expense to us too.
You can tell me the time. I'll tell you, another question I have, and this might be for Blaine. If you were to run pipelines out of Elizabeth Township to another well site, like say in Ross River, and pump the water out of Elizabeth Township to another municipality, would you need our approval for that to run more pipelines?
No. Well, we haven't gotten approval for your pipeline, any transmission lines here, water lines, and the like. You can argue whether the water's going out, if there's not gonna be a truck impact, whether the water's staying in the township or going out, legally doesn't matter. But we have in the past, on other applications, included pipelines as part of the conditional use application.
Is there anything else I can
Any other
answer?
questions from the commissioners? Mr. Zeller? Any questions for this witness? Is he here? Tyler, Mr. Tyler?
He had to step out. His dad just being admitted to the hospital.
Oh, okay, sorry. Mr. Rossetti,
Yes.
any questions for this witness?
Yes, I do.
Please come up to the mic, please, sir.
about fresh water, and you mean, York River is now not going down, Circle Bridge down, it's all sulfur treated, sulfur contaminated water. Now, are you gonna pump that sulfur into your wells, or you gonna treat that water, or how is that, affects the drilling part?
So, the Youghiogheny River is considered to be a freshwater source, and that's what we're using.
But it still has sulfur in it from Circle Bridge down to almost industrial.
I can't, I'm sorry, I can't speak to the sulfur contents of the river water, but, the Youghiogheny River is considered a freshwater resource, and we are pumping water from the Youghiogheny River, if that answers your question.
That's what you mean by fresh water.
It's the Youghiogheny River water.
Spring water.
Ms. Ash, any questions?
Yeah.
So the number of trips, I was a little confused by the numbers, so it sounded like 8,000, would that just be, that would be for both sites, Plutus and Apollo B? At some point, at one point, it was 8,000 in and out of those pumps.
What Blaine said in his introduction was that typically.
Ms. Price, you can take that mic off, and just pass it, that might be easier instead of you guys getting
Yeah,
it.
no, we don't need to take it too close. So typically, the estimation that we utilize for truck trips is 4,000 to 5,000 per well. I'm being, in worst case scenario, I'm saying 5,000 truck trips per well. So I think that's where you heard the 8,000 trips. So per well, when we talk about the back and forth truck trips, like for instance, if this facility isn't in place, the number that would go past your house, for the development on Apollo B, it would be about 15,000. And if we include the development on Plutus, it would be about 30,000. Is that right? Yeah, and then double, yeah.
And that's just water, what about other trucks? I know we're talking water development, but what is the estimate of other truck traffic?
I don't have that available, I'm sorry.
I believe that is addressed as part of the Plutus and all of the application.
So this would be the less of that number than this is water we're talking about.
This is the water.
And this is the most significant amount of trucking that is utilized in operations, period.
And then this is a question, you guys use the word approved haul routes.
Mhm.
When you use that, so is that officially been approved, there is no other option, you know, I've asked this before, this one has asked this question before, so I guess this is a commissioner question, that is the approved route.
That is the approved truck route. This board and myself have gone through a lot of research meetings. I mean, we've met with PennDOT over various ways to try and get the traffic there. This was determined to be the least impactful way on the township. I mean, again, there's only three ways to get into this site, either one of these sites, and unfortunately, none of them were perfect. And this was determined by the commissioners to be the least impactful.
Thank you.
Mr. Lucas, your next witness?
At this point, we'd like to call Ryan Daly. Now, he's been before the board before, but for the record, Ryan, can you just state your name, your employer, your position, and what your role is on this project?
Yeah, my name is Ryan Daly. I'm a project manager with Civil and Environmental Consultants. We are a consulting firm that works with HHEX. Our role for this project has been preparation of the various DEP permits, as well as survey work, and then the ENS plans, highway occupancy permits.
Now, the rather large application binders, exhibits 1 and 2 that I previously identified, what was your role in preparation and submission of those?
So I oversaw preparation of those application packages.
Okay, and to your knowledge, is all the information in those true and correct?
Yes,
Now, there have been 2 updates, if I'm correct.
correct.
One dealing with the number of pumps at the gaming pump house building. Can you explain the change there?
Sure, so the original application, the plan showed 3 pumps within the pump station. That would be 2 pumps that would be operational, and then 1 that would be for backup in case one of the pumps went down. as part of Huntley's and McKim&Creed's kind of final design phase. They did some value engineering and determined that installing that backup pump probably wasn't necessary. So they've since removed the backup pump and have just planned to move forward with the 2 pumps.
But the design of the building stays the same.
That's correct.
Then the other change is that, with respect to CEDO, we'll get to the drawing here in a few minutes, but just explain briefly what that change was.
Right, so I'm sure if you've driven past the Plutus and CEDO site, you're well aware that they're under construction out there. As part of construction, they encountered a little more topsoil than what was expected. And so in order to keep that topsoil on site, they're proposing to shrink the size of the CEDO tank pad and stockpile some of that extra material at the kind of the northeast end of the old CEDO pad.
So that have the effect of reducing potential truck traffic.
No, that wouldn't change any sort of truck traffic in and out of the site.
Okay, will it pull the pad further away from the residences?
Yes.
To the northeast and the east?
Yes.
With that, if we could, maybe if you go to the drawing C100, which is one of the application materials that's on board, and just kind of walk through in a little more detail what Kim gave an overview of in terms of how the system's going to start. And let's start in the middle of the Yagagani river. What's there and how does that water ultimately end up on the CEDO pad?
Sure. So out approximately 60 feet out into the river, will be the intake structure. That'll be a half barrel aquatic screen intake structure. Water will go down through that structure, be piped underground back to the pump house. The pump house will have a wet well where the water will be lifted up into the actual water line, and then from there the water line will proceed kind of in a northwesterly direction across the trail up to Blythedale Road, and then following Blythedale Road up around, and finally up to the CEDO pad where the CEDO tank will be installed.
Now, back at the intake, will there be noise and signage around that so people are aware where that intake is?
Yes. So the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, as well as the U.S. Coast Guard, is reviewing a ACE navigation plan, which includes any sort of warning buoys that would need to be installed within the river.
And DEP approval is required for that facility as well, correct?
That's correct. And the DEP GP4 was actually approved last week.
Now, the water will flow from the intake to the pump house then, right?
Correct.
And that'll be just like gravity flow down hill, right?
Correct. So if we want to go to drawing C, I believe it's 01, be a little better depiction. PDF. Yeah, so this is a closer view of the facility. As you can see in the profile at the bottom, maybe try to point it out on the screen here. So this area of the profile represents the river. This black line represents the normal pool of the river. And then the bottom of the riverbed is shown in a lighter gray line here. This will be the actual intake structure here. So like I said, there'll be a half barrel aquatic screen intake that will sit on the river bottom. There'll be a vertical pipe extending another 4 or 5 feet below the riverbed. And then there'll be a 20-inch pipe that'll flow back into the wet well. And as you can see, this pipe is sloped back here. So there won't actually be any suction forces from these pumps. All the water will flow via gravity back into the wet well. And so what will happen is the water within the wet well will be the same as the water level within the river. Once the water's within the wet well, the pumps that'll be located towards the bottom of the wet well, driven by motors that sit up on the floor of the pump house, will pull the water, to the floor and push it out through the, water line.
Now, is there any system to account for low water conditions in the rock?
Yes, and so one of the requirements of HEX's water management plan, which allows them to withdraw water from the river, is that they can only withdraw water during certain stages. So if the water in the river drops to a certain stage, they're not allowed to withdraw water anymore. And so there'll be a low water shutoff within the wet well. So if the water level ever drops down to that low water level, the pumps will automatically shut off and they won't be able to withdraw any more water.
And is there any mechanism to account for flooding situations where the water's way above?
Right, and so similarly, in the event of a high flow river stage, there'll be a high water shut off up closer to the floor of the pump house to where the motors would shut down before water inundates the pump house.
What's the size of the building?
So the size is approximately 20 feet by 32 feet, or as Kim said, 640 square feet.
And what's the approximate height of the building?
The highest side will be about 14 feet. The roof will pitch to one direction.
Exhibit 4 in our submission is a rendering of what the building and the surrounding area would look at. Can you put that up for everybody? Should be an image from that.
It's good, you don't even notice.
This is the nighttime view.
It's okay.
So if you just give a little bit of description of the exterior of the building.
Right, so obviously this is the rendering of the pump house. The building itself will sit on concrete footers. The exterior of the building will be a split face concrete block. I think now the plan is to have a kind of like a sandstone color. The roof itself, like I said, will be,
We would note there, if the township would prefer a different color scheme, certainly, we would have no objection to that.
as I mentioned earlier, the roof will be pitched in one direction. So I believe the roof will be a corrugated steel with some sort of rubber coating on it. As you can see, there's a little landing in the front here to get up to the finished floor elevation. Also, you'll notice this little feature here next to the doorway. That's a simple light, anything like you would see on a residential porch or above a garage door.
Is there going to be any fuel use on site?
The pumps will be electric powered.
And the ordinance requires that building be at least 200 feet away from the nearest nearby residence. How far is the nearest residence here?
So the nearest residence is a little over 400 feet to the southwest.
Now, in terms of sound, the sound generator is going to be the two motors for the pumps, is that correct?
Correct.
And did HEX have this acoustical consultant do an analysis of the impact of that?
Yes, so HEX hired acoustical control to do both the ambient sound study as well as a sound impact assessment. The ambient sound study showed that the ambient noise levels were around 54 decibels, which I think according to the ordinance that would give an allowable decibel range around 60 decibels.
And what did the sound impact assessment here reveal in terms of noise generation?
Yeah, so when they ran the models for the pumps inside the concrete structure, the decibel levels at the nearest receptor were around 30 decibels, so significantly less than what the ambient levels are out there.
Now, let's talk just a little bit about the construction of the building and the pipe. What's the anticipated construction period for the project?
So total project for building as well as water line up to CETO is probably within the 4-month range. As far as construction of the building and intake structure, I think closer to 2 months is what's expected.
And in terms of the anticipated traffic during construction, what's being projected in terms of truck traffic?
I think during construction, you'll have obviously a lot of pickup trucks with workers coming in, but as far as larger vehicles, probably around like 10 trucks per day on average.
And once it's in operation, what kind of traffic do you anticipate?
So once construction's over, you're really just looking at maybe 1 pickup truck a day going in for maintenance and inspection of the facility.
Will there be any impact on the pavilion that's nearby?
No, the pavilion can remain open the whole time.
And the pipes that cross the trail, will the trail remain open at all times while construction is undertaken?
Yes, and so when they're working in the vicinity of the trail, or if they need to, when they're doing the crossing of the trail, they're actually planning to construct a temporary path to maintain trail traffic.
Now, once the facility's up in operation, you said there's only going to be typically a pickup truck a day while it's being used. Is the pump station going to be used all the time?
So it'll be used only during fracking operations. So as Kim mentioned, if they're fracking a well for 7 to 14 days, it'll be used during that period. But between their operations, there won't be any use for the building at that point.
Well, why don't we shift gears now up to the CETO site, if you can walk through using C100 on that. Give an overview to the board.
Yep.
About what's going to be on the CETO pad.
Right. So what's shown on here is the layout for the Plutus well pad and CETO tank pad, which were previously approved. The big blue dot represents the CETO tank, above ground storage tank. And then you also see there's a temporary above ground water line that would run water from the CETO tank over to the Plutus well pad.
And what's the size of the tank?
The size of the tank diameter is approximately 190 feet. It'll be about 12 feet tall. And so if you do the math, assuming 2 foot of freeboard within your tank, that comes out to a little over 2 million gallons of water.
And what's the material of the tank construction?
Yeah, so there'll be steel walls with an HDPE liner that kind of drapes over it. So you can think of it as, a large above ground swimming pool.
It'll be open on top.
Correct.
Okay, and the only water that will be contained in that tank is fresh water originating from the aquifer, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
No other fluids are being.
Yeah, there'll be no flowback water or anything stored in that tank.
Now, the ordinance requirement is that the tank be at least 300 feet away from any nearby residence. What's the closest residence to the tank?
So the closest residence is about 428 feet to the northeast from where the tank's proposed.
Now, we've already mentioned this pad's already been approved, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Now, the Huntley is proposing to slightly reduce the size of that pad.
Right.
Can you go to what has been marked as Exhibit 5, the board that shows that?
All right.
And you can just explain how
HEX is proposing to reduce the size of the pad.
Right. So basically shown as the big rectangle around the outside, that was the originally approved footprint of the CETO tank pad. As I mentioned earlier, because of some things they've ran into during construction, they're proposing to reduce the size of that, so that'll be shown by this dashed line side.
Now, acoustic control also ran both an ambient and a sound impact assessment with CETO pad, is that correct?
Yes.
And this accounted for the operation, primarily noise from the pumps associated with the tank individually and in combination with that limited period of time that fluid was being correct?
That's correct.
And basically, the limit, the way the ordinance works, is a little bit over 60. And was the physical controls conclusion that that would be met here?
Yes.
Okay. And in that regard, both the original plan and the revised plan have a sound wall along the eastern and northeastern portion of the pad, is that correct?
Yes.
And is, okay, go ahead.
I was in, and so if you remember from the original Plutus and CETO application, the sound walls are proposed along this edge and then along this northern edge, about 175 feet or so out here. So really the coverage of the sound walls isn't changing, just bringing them in a little bit.
And the height of the sound wall is
16 feet.
What's the material of the sound wall made of?
It's an acoustical vinyl panels with some insulation.
There's a similar sound wall that was part of the plan that was previously approved for the Plutus well pad itself.
Yes,
So effectively, you have two sound walls on this property.
correct, yeah.
Traffic, let's talk about that during construction. What's the status of the construction of the pad?
So as pad construction is ongoing, I'm sure if you've taken a close look, you'll notice that the well pad is coming close to final grade. The tank pad, I'm sure they'll be starting earthwork on that here shortly.
What additional traffic is going to be generated during construction to place the tank and the associated facilities on the site?
Not very much, a few truckloads for a day or two to bring in materials for the tank.
Less than a week.
Yes, much less than a week.
During operation, once CETO and Gateway are fully in operation, what kind of traffic is going to be coming in and out of the site?
Similarly, the additional traffic's just, a pickup truck or two coming in to monitor the tank.
And is the haul route for the CETO tank the same as for this well pad?
Yes,
And that's all been previously approved.
correct.
What about lighting?
So lighting would be the temporary telescoping lights that you would see on a typical construction site. They're basically self-generated. They would only be in use when they're fracking. So if the tank's actively being used during the night, they would have the temporary lights up.
Now, the sound wall is going to be 16 feet high. What is the height of the lighting facilities going to be?
Correct, so they can set the elevation on the telescoping lights at 16 feet or under if they need to, so that the sound walls can provide buffer from any light glare.
Now, the ordinance requires that off-site lighting at the property line not exceed the false 2-foot candles.
Yes.
Is that correct? Did CEC include what's called photometric analysis as part of the application?
Yes, and as you'll see on that photometric plan, the measured foot candles at the property line was 0 from the proposed lighting. And that plan also does not take into account any sound wall barriers.
So, that's all the questions I have for Mr. Dan.
Thank you, is Mr. Zeiler gone, or is he back?
He's gone.
He's gone, okay. Mr. Rossetti, any questions for this witness?
A couple of questions. How did you chose that site right there to put your pump station?
That would probably be a question for HEX. I mean, I think it's a combination of availability from, to the location within the river, as well as proximity to pipeline up to CEDO.
Why couldn't you not go down farther towards industry, now get farther away from the nearest residents? Why, if you're right there next to the
I can't really speak to that. I mean, we're outside the required setbacks. So beyond that, I can't really
Also,
speak.
since the Ark River is considered a freshwater river, you could have went upstream to Cedarville and put the pump station up there, which there's no residents around there where the old hookup plant, the old hookup area used to be. It's all leveled off, and there's nobody around, you could get your water off the river that way.
Again, I can't really speak to why the site itself was selected. I know moving down to Sutersville would create a much longer pipeline route, which would, well, to get up to CEDO, which would probably have a larger effect on more residents.
Well, you're coming from Cedar Plant, you're going back down to my area, which would be the Ocala site, right? You're gonna eventually have pipeline going out there, right?
Right.
But if you come off the Ark River, off of Cedarville, and go across there by the Casey Freeze, you go back up that way to Solid Coal property, and up to Ocala Plant.
Yeah, again, I can't really speak to that. I mean, HEX has obtained the lease agreements from the landowners along this route. And also the water line route from Plutus over to Apollo is co-located within their gas pipeline right away. And I don't know if they have any plans for a gas line down where you're talking.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Ash, any questions for the witness? No? Thank you. Mr. Lucas?
That concludes our presentation.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioners, I apologize.
The pump station up at the pump of the casino tank, that be housed in a reduced noise level?
Scott can probably talk to that better than I can.
Scott Kruger, water superintendent, contracted the pumping. Yeah, the pump that we're proposing to utilize out there will be a sound attenuated pump, 60 dB at 30 feet.
Okay, my second question is just basically from my own knowledge, so you've shut off that high water level in the yard. What are you gonna do to protect your building? Is that building gonna be waterproof? I know that's the boss one, but
Yeah, so Jonathan can speak to that.
Hi, Jonathan Shimko of McKinnon Creed, responsible, project manager, responsible for the design and construction of the pump house intake and pipeline. We presented before the zoning hearing board about floodproofing of this building. The building, the well itself will have anti-flotation collars at the base of it that will use soil pressure to prevent uplift and flotation. The building itself with a flood rate will be anchored towards code for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers floodproofing standards, as well as International Building Code, to prevent uplift as well as water intrusion of all the devices within the building.
Any other questions from commissioners? Mr. Rossetti, did those additional comments from other witnesses lead you to any more questions? Do you have any more questions for those gentlemen that just spoke?
So that building is gonna be 5 feet above the floodplain, right?
Yeah, I think you guys can just testify.
So the finished floor will be at 755, which is within the floodplain. For reference, the event that happened in September, the finished floor would have been dry at that period, but the FEMA identified floodplain for the 100-year event is 764, so.
Again, I asked before, what made you choose that site right there? Is there anybody in your company here to say, speak for them?
We did some route analysis of pipeline, but the property selection was outside of our scope of work.
Okay, now you're gonna mention you have trucks coming into that area. That road is not big enough to handle the heavy truck you're gonna have. How are you gonna get the material in there? Besides pickup trucks.
Yeah, so anytime they need to bring in a large load, they'll have to provide additional signage and flaggers to get those trucks in there.
Thank you.
Ms. Ash, those witnesses, need you any more questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. There being nothing else by the party, I would ask Mr. Rossetti, do you have any witnesses or testimony you'd like to present on your own behalf?
No, I don't.
Ms. Ash, any witnesses or testimony you'd like to present on your own behalf?
No, thank you.
Okay. At this time, we will handle public comments. We will have a 3-minute time limit. Mr. Seiler is the first on the list. I understand he has had to leave due to an emergency. Mr. Rossetti, would you like to speak in public comment, sir?
I have nothing against them putting a pump station down in Blydale, pumping the water up from the York River to the site. The only thing that concerns me is where they're putting it at. They could put it down river more or upriver towards Cedarville. The only objection I have, that will cut down on my traffic past my house 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You know, you don't realize how much truck traffic I get here now. But it has cut down a lot since they started drilling. I don't want that to be a nuisance again in the future with the water trucks coming out. If you get 5,000 trucks a day, I'm sure not gonna stand for it. In fact, I'm thinking of putting my house up for sale. Thank you.
Russell Vermanick.
Russell Urbanic, that's V's and Victory, ERBANC, 325 High Street. And I'd just like to say I'm in favor of this water intake facility and the pumping station up to the tank, because it's gonna take thousands of trucks off the road. When they're fracking, they're gonna be running day and night. So minimizing that truck traffic will be a great benefit to the township and everybody that lives along the trucking route. So, I think it would be good to see that facility put in. It'll be faster and, less of an impact on everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ash, would you like to add anything in your public comment?
Much like the other people on the trucking route, I am in favor of the gas line and the CETO tank so that there will not be trucks and the nuisance of that on top of everything else that the neighbors of the well have to deal with in terms of noise. It will cut down on the, the noise in the neighborhood as well as the safety, and I've talked about this before. I know that you guys are addressing the safety at the Nichols Hill Fallen Timber T there, because it is not safe at all, and I appreciate that you will look into that and make sure that the safety, even without these trucks on the road, is still a concern. So, like I said, this is something that will help us tremendously as neighbors of the well. Thank you.
Thank you. Fred Bickerton.
Yes, I just have a couple items I'd like to touch base on. First one being safety. We're talking about putting a tank up here, which is basically a temporary tank. I really question putting that type of tank up there. As you all, well, most of you are old enough to remember when National Oil had the problem.
where they have fuel tanks spinning. We put several 100,000 gallons of oil in the river. You put that tank up there, it ruptures for some reason. There are people who live down below there that are gonna get ill. They don't have to be within a few hundred feet to get hurt. The second item on safety is that intake. That river is very shallow there. Right now, you probably only have 4 or 5 feet of water in the river at altitude, where that pumping station is gonna be. You're in a park. You're gonna have kids in that river. Somebody needs to make sure that it is entirely safe. The kids can't get near that intake. The other item I have, and Larry Koch, who was gracious enough to let me borrow an email that he put out, looking at the value of the pumping station and what Conley Company is going to save by putting it in. It's interesting because I did a quick back field effect calculation myself, and we go up nearly the same thing. The first year, they're going to put 6 wells in. We've estimated they're going to save $3 million by putting this in. And what did they negotiate with the township? $1,000 a month, I heard, for 12 months. I mean, these guys are great negotiators. They really snookered you. By the time they put the other 9 wells in that they've said they're going to put in, they will have saved over $10 million in a period of about 3 years. And that 3 years are going to give the township about $36,000.
Wow. I just want to go on record and say I was not a commissioner that negotiated anything. And I don't think there's a lot of us out there negotiating. I'm on record as not negotiating anything.
Well, I sure hope if we have any negotiations in the future, we get somebody that does
We're a
what
one-man show.
She's never negotiated anything in 4 years. So.
Yeah, right.
Public comment. Go ahead, Fred, finish your public comment. Thank you. Scott Taylor?
Stop it now. I can get it off here.
You say that everyone's driving, not parking.
Yeah, right. You know,
Okay,
such a lot.
all right, okay. Now this out of commissioner meeting, I'm running this hearing. Okay. Public comment. Go ahead, Mr. Taylor.
Good evening, Scott Taylor, 304 Mohawk Drive. Echoing some of what Fred just said, you know, this is a permanent installation. Why do we need a permanent installation? Part of their water management plan they have in place right now, they will draw water from Rock Run Enterprises, which is over in Studersville. They were gonna truck it in. That's a simple pipe in water, truck backs up to it, hooks up air hose to it and draws water out. It's not a pump station, they're permanently buried pipes that run all over our township. Why does it have to be permanent? It can be temporary water line from that pump up to the top of the hill, fill that tank up for the 3 months that they need it, take it out. So why can't we do something like it? Current use is estimated at for the 6 wells at about 3 months. That's definitely temporary, right? So, let's see here, why does this have to be permanent? Mr. Lucas' open statements was to supply water for this township and surrounding areas. Mr. Kuzma asked the questions, I don't know if Ms. Price knows the full plan of Huntley, but I suspect she does. The Harapad, which is being proposed over in Ross River Township behind the ice garden, is currently permitted through the DEP. They're not acting on it yet, but I wonder where that water is going to come from to go over there. They're going to truck it. Apollo B to Dominion, major modification. I have talked to a couple of you commissioners about that. Act 14 commandment first of the year. They're planning an 18-inch water line to go from Apollo B to Dominion's gas line. You don't need water and a gas line. Where's that 18-inch water line going to? Somewhere else to supply their well pads, maybe sell it. And like Fred said, what do we get? $1,000 a month? Renegotiating terms as we speak, as we put out planning last week. Great job, guys. It's my belief, and evidence shows that Huntley obviously has other plans for this, opposed to what they just told me. Now, the Planning Commission recommended this, yet 0 studies of impact noise otherwise were done to prove anything that they said. If I propose to you guys, I'm gonna put a rose garden on the clerk works over there to make it beautiful, would you believe it would last? Hell no. Why are we just believing their talking points? Why is our planning commission not doing something more than just sitting here talking? Why aren't you guys demanding they do something more? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Ted Grice?
Okay, Ted Grice, I have in there the zoning hearing board video and timestamps of all the different places along those lines. That, he said it tonight as well, so I don't even have to say it. Huntley & Huntley is currently developing a water distribution facility for use in the township and surrounding areas, the purpose of which is to dramatically reduce the need to truck water. That's their cost of water, because now it's free water. But as was stated earlier, that free water, that's fresh water, is really sulfur contaminated water, and I know that because I went Sunday and took these pictures with my wife, my son, and my dog. And my dog, who doesn't like water, jumped in after me when I was there, and she smells like sulfur, like crap that I can't get out of her because of that, and that's the water that's being pulled up there. Kim Price said that presently we have these wells and no others. She said that again tonight, but their plan is to go further. Their plan is to take this water. They pretty much have said it. Right now, the only two things that are out there are Apollo B and Plutus, but their plans are to go further with this water, and we're allowing that to be for other facilities. You signed the lease, but had no thing to it. Then they say in the zoning hearing board meeting, well, what we want is 15 years and the ability to go ahead and release it for 15 years more. That's 30 years. They're saying they can whip off 6 wells in a matter of months, and they're wanting this thing for 30 years. That is not a temporary situation. They talk about temporary water lines across the CEDO. They talk about temporary PA American water lines. They talk about all these other temporary lines, but this is a permanent structure, and it has in here, and you can see the quotes in there when asked directly, is this a permanent station? And Kim Price thinks, yes, this is going to be a permanent station. We don't plan on this leaving it anytime soon. There was a question about how deep is the water there, and then the statement was, oh, it's 10 feet there, is what the zoning was, what the Excites thought based upon that stuff. But if you look at those pictures there, I was able to first take my kayak across and never hit bottom of it all the way around, so I knew the next day I could walk across it. And I walked across it all times, and the highest point, which was one brief moment in time, was to here, which was under 4 feet, is how deep that is. And there's recycling water there that further down is going to be, fish are going to be affected, I'm going to be affected. I have to go around buoys and all this other crap that they have all over the place for something that everyone thinks is 10 feet deep, but it's not 10 feet deep, it's under 4 feet deep. Tonight, this says the CEDO tank will only house water from the Yacht and no other source. That means no PA American water is going in there. I think that they should fill it up with PA American water, use that water to be the water that they're doing this stuff from. Waiting throughout the wells as this goes. This can be done. They can save the truck traffic. I'm not against the CEDO pad. I'm not against the truck traffic. I am against the fact that the Yacht cannot sustain this, and we can't have this be our plan for the next 30 years. And then they wanted to go after that and pump all this water to all these different municipalities. This isn't right.
Thank you. Cindy McCall?
Cindy McCall, 1663 Fallen Timber Road. I just have a few brief comments, and again, appreciate all the comments that have been made so far, that I can keep this brief. But I'm thinking about the truck traffic and daily drive-throughs in many municipalities, in the places I travel. The roads are in bad shape. There are so many places, and in our township too, where looking at the shoulder, there isn't one. And even near the Horseshoe Bend, there was a great big spot like that, I'm concerned over by Lovedale and several other spots where it looks like somebody could lose a car in those holes. They're so big. And that's just normal soil erosion and water and things from rain. So when I think about the impact of the truck traffic on roads that already have some issues like that, this is really huge. This is the most significant thing we have to talk about. So obviously, I believe that we need to do this to cut the truck traffic. I'm not as concerned about the river water level because we've talked about how there are limits on that, and Randy will address that again, but that it cannot draw more than a certain amount of what is there. I like the idea of the 150,000 truck trips being reduced, but the biggest impact, I think, in I'll address the temporary nature of the building and water lines too. This is really a long-term structure. It's a long-term plan. It could exceed my lifetime that some of this drilling will be going on. So future years of deeper drilling will make this temporary infrastructure problem a permanent long-term inconvenience for the township. I think we need this infrastructure, and I thank you guys for this plan.
Thank you very much. There being no other public comment, this hearing is adjourned. We're going to take about a 10-minute break. Sorry, that ran a little bit longer than we had anticipated, but so we'll take a 10-minute break and then start the commission meeting.